Hi. Okay. I think I could kind of giggle and laugh for a very long time. So, in the interest of starting our conversation, I will cease. I will cease for the time being. That's hard. Okay, so I think it's so interesting that when we have conversations, there's a lot of understanding of what the other person is saying or doing, even if our experience is very, very different. And so I feel as if there's just so many different ways of getting at the same thing, which in our case, you can call it, let's say, either shadow work or frequency medicine or vibrational medicine. And there's a lot of intuition involved. And what I think is also really interesting is your modality, my modality, your modality, let's just say being like singing medicine songs, and my modality, like giving psychic readings and using my intuition to like help people bypass their ego. We are both able to bypass the ego. However, I have more trouble because I have to talk to people. I have to talk to people and like kind of energetically bypass the ego. And if they start thinking too much, everyone's in trouble. Whereas in your case, people are usually laying down and they're ready to receive. And since they're in a feminine state because they want to receive, it's really easy to bypass the ego. And I just think it's so interesting how my, let's say, method is something that just came about of my personal life experience, my happening to be psychic, and my psychic ability happening to see shadow. But I'm curious about your modality and more about like where it comes from, and like, do the people you study with, do they consider this shadow work, or how do they conceptualize of this work, you know?
So it comes from the Peruvian Amazon, from a community that's the Shipibo community, an indigenous community in the Peruvian Amazon. And it traditionally, it's not thought of in any specific sort of psychological, like Western psychological framework. For them, it's just medicine. It's the one of several traditional ways of healing, along with like kind of a more typical sort of herbal medicine kind of tradition. And the tradition works with teacher plants. These teacher plants, for the most part, most of them are not psychoactive. However, the process of working with them on a deep level for your own healing, but also to learn how to channel the plant energy is done via using ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is taken in order to improve greatly or expand the ability for us to communicate more directly with these plant spirits that are from certain very specific trees and bushes for the most part. And so in this process of communing with them on a deep level, that process is in Shipibo is called sama. In English, the word diet is used, which I'm not that much of a fan of because of how much it refers to, or it seems to refer to food. Yeah, during this process is basically a commitment to a certain amount of time to work on that deep level with the plants. And as my teacher says, if you don't sing, you don't learn. So you can heal without really learning how to sing in ceremony, but if you really want to learn, singing is the way to do it.
You know what I find so interesting about what you shared is how holistic it seems to me. So many people in the West feel as if they don't have a voice, or they lost their voice, or they literally have like stuff going on in their throat chakras. So, some people, their voice is not their voice, right? It's too high and they're like having some sort of fake voice. So it's so interesting that how you learn is to use your voice. So like that is healing in and of itself, and there's some kind of like mastery element in there in and of itself. And this idea, which I think is so interesting, is like, well, this is just medicine or this is just healing, when it's like some of the deepest form of healing that is possibly available on earth right now, that so many other people, not to say everyone should go to the jungle, but a lot of people in the West do something like scratch the surface. They do something like possibly talk therapy or something like that. And they want to heal through just that. But my thing with that is then you're trying to heal through your ego because you're talking. And that only goes so far. It has its place, but it only goes so far. And what I was talking about, how when I talk to people, I have to somehow go past their ego because we're still talking. But I have to have the frequency of truth. And what I talk about has to have intuition. And usually I don't talk too much. The sessions are short, actually, but I'm activating something deep within them, which in your case, it sounds as if the plant medicine spirit is kind of like the one who, would you say this, that she's the one who like holds the session, she's the one who does the work, and you just kind of remain open? Or how would you say it?
I'm during singing, depending on how long you've been doing it and how experienced you are, over time, you learn to step aside more and more and just channel. So my teachers, for example, when they are singing in ceremony, like they're being destroyed by the singing. Like they don't exist while they're singing. Like that's the level that you have to get in order to really be a powerful shaman in this tradition. Like you have to let go of your identity completely and step aside.
As you know, I'm all into that. Even if I'm not a part of your lineage, I'm all into that. And I think that's really fascinating. Like it kind of points to this bigger question of, is true healing, does that mean ego death? And if you don't go through ego death, does that mean you're not really healing? You're doing something your ego prefers to do. Like your ego is like, I'm healing. I've heard this. I went to my therapist this last season, and we had therapy goals for the season, and I met them all. I heard someone literally say that, like, good for you. You must be totally healed now. Like their ego was right? Gold star.
Healing is such an easy identity.
Yeah. And so like
fall into, and it is a first step. It's just, hopefully people don't get stuck at that step, and it's very easy to do. Like even everyone like falls into that trap. It's part of how we're designed, and that's it takes effort, and that's good that it takes effort to be like, okay, like I'm gonna try to live a little less attached to my identities.
Yeah. There was something else you mentioned that really perked my ears up. You were talking about like a commitment to the process. Like if you want to learn this, then you have to commit to a certain period of time, et cetera. And I also deeply resonate with that. Like that either the commitment or lack of commitment is something I see in my own students, and I have to call them out. Like, you're not fully committed to this. Do you feel that? This is commitment. What you're doing, that's not commitment. Do you feel that? Because people don't know what commitment is. like seriously, in real life, they don't know what commitment is. So it might be something like, you know what, can I think on that and get back to you? And that might be another way of saying, I may never bring up this topic ever again, right? And it's almost like socially allowed to drop that. But to me, it's like, no, you have to give me a response, yes or no, and you have to give me a deadline, like Friday the 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Like if you don't have that kind of commitment or container, it's really easy to have like, you know, this is my area of what I work with people is like the mental skips where people skip over keeping a strong container for themselves and their own experience. So to me, helping people learn how to be like trustworthy to themselves is a big thing about how I work with people. And I'm curious how you see that in this kind of commitment that you have to make to the work that you do or the learning that you do. Like I'm talking about mental skips that people make and how that hurts them. And you're talking about like committing to learning and that container, is it like given to you by the teacher? Like what, can you just speak on what comes to mind?
In my opinion, it has more to do with you can only be committed to what you truly resonate with. And as you know, there's so many traditions and methods and ways to go about spiritual transformation. So yeah, I think that those mental skips happen with people that recognize that a certain method or tradition has a lot of value, but maybe doesn't resonate with them. And so and it's almost like they're not able to, they're kind of not checking in with themselves enough to be like, you know, on one hand, I really value this method or tradition, but it's just not what resonates with me, you know. So
What that brings up for me is this idea of like false resonance versus like true resonance, where a lot of people feel scared of something that's really good for them because their ego feels scared and they identify with their ego and they can't tell that that's what they're doing. You know, I've literally heard someone say this, a student saying, my inner child doesn't want to do my homework. Okay, like I highly doubt it's your inner child will be liberated most likely if you do this kind of homework. I'm pretty sure it's your ego that doesn't want to do this homework because your ego is the lazy one. So like, you know, anyone can, you know, feel free to disagree with me, but this is how I felt about that particular situation because that student failed in the end. They just dropped out, you know, and it wasn't their inner child, it was their ego. And so like,
yeah.
For people who want to commit to anything that's good for them, do you have any kind of feeling for like how they can get through that like false resonance, like, oh, this doesn't resonate with me, when really it's because you're scared and really, you know, like your deepest truth, that's what you kind of like need, let's say. Like, do you have any words for that?
Good question. I mean, when I think about how tough this medicine work of dieta can be, especially in terms of the shadow work that's done in dieta. I mean, the only thing I can say, you know, we all have, at some level, have fear, and good. That's okay, you know. Like I think being fearless often ends up being an identity to latch onto. I think recognizing that, like, have the fear and yet also recognize that working through the fear is always going to be better for, like, you're going to be better off. And so for me, the motivation to keep going deeper and deeper into those like deep recesses of shadow that that you can get into during the dieta process is just seeing the results. When I see the results, I'm like, now when I go into ceremony, I'm like, kill me. Like, just kill me. Like, not in a suicide sense, but like in an in an ego death sense of like, keep doing what you're doing and go deeper. I'm scared freaking shitless, but I know that I'm going to come out on the other end feeling so much better, and having more wisdom. So I would, yeah, I would say just notice, notice how you feel, how you feel about yourself after you've worked through fear or fearful situations. Let that be the fuel, and maybe what you feel doesn't seem that amazing to you, but it's amazing to me.
I really appreciate that. And I feel as if that that can hit home with just the people who have done a little bit of work on themselves, as opposed to the ones who have just decided not to in this lifetime or not yet, which is fine. I really appreciated the vibration of your last answer. So I kind of want to close up there if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Thanks for having this conversation.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Bye.
Bye.